Welcome to the archives. Bendy and the Dark Revival is filled with numerous characters that each had a critical role to play in the progression of the game. Here in the archives, you will learn a little more about them in an up-close and personal way. Feel free to explore.
Bendy, the iconic imp, was redesigned for Dark Revival to stand out a bit from his traditional cartoon appearance by giving him a suite of clothes. He posed some minor challenges, specifically creating a face that sported the classic Bendy eerie smile, but still managed to be heartwarming in the right conditions. He is a fan favorite, so his design had to be just right. During production, we originally envisioned Bendy to talk with a series of cute squeaks to contrast the dark, low voice of the Ink Demon. But this turned out to be very distracting, and the idea was scrapped pretty early on. Too much dry air, not enough fish food. Wilson was a difficult character to balance. At first, the players are purposely led to believe he is a one-note character, obviously evil with an over, the top villain personality, but as the story progresses, we see other sides of the character and the player becomes muddled with who this man really is. In one draft, Wilson was written as a servant of Nathan Arch Jr., a separate character at the time. But the story made far more sense when the two characters became one, eliminating a lot of needless narrative complexity. Audrey is a kind-hearted rogue with courage, determination, some flaws, and a deep, dark past. To make our story work, we needed a newcomer to the cartoon studio world, and Audrey was the perfect fresh eyes to help the experience the adventure. From day one of production, we knew that if people wouldn't connect with Audrey by the end of the game itself wouldn't be successful. Fortunately, she turned out to be quite memorable indeed and stands out from the other members of the cast. Designed by Thomas Connor of the Gent Corporation, stolen by Joey Drew, retrieved by Archgate, and once again reclaimed by Gent, the Ink Machine's next adventure is a mystery. LOL! As the world of Dark Revival became more complex and established, we realized the Ink Demon's design needed a complete rethink to match our new tone. Previous versions of his appearance looked absolutely silly when placed in the world alongside the other characters. No amount of creepy music or screen effects could conceal how out of place he looked. The Ink Demon needed to look different than everything else in the world and show a natural progression of the Ink Demon's evolution, as Wilson held the cycle in place. Returning for the climax of Dark Revival, Beast Bendy also was revisited with the mindset of making him far more powerful and beast-like. Traditionally, in most horror games, they tend to build to a point where the main villain becomes a final form monster as a final boss. It's practically a trope. Our idea. What if you got to play as that final form instead? Wilson's deadly guards and scientists. They aren't perfect, but the Keepers will get the job done, no matter the cost. They are responsible for pressing the Ink Demon inside a smaller form, keeping his power sealed away until Audrey came along and unknowingly changed the situation. The Keepers were visually designed to reflect the dangers and evils of the Ink Machine itself. Faceless beings made of gears and wires with no sense of morality, ordered around like cattle, a creation living without purpose. Barley, Charlie, and Edgar, the three original members of the Butcher Gang, were formed from the Ink Machine, deconstructed by Alice Angel for body parts, and bond together to stay alive with sneak attacks on their prey. In Dark Revival, we meet an artificial fourth member of the gang, Carly, the Ghost Girl. Although, when you begin to examine her closely, Carly appears to be only a shell, with perhaps someone inside. As the cycle was held in place, and with the influence of the Ink Demon held at bay, the cartoon world was able to grow and advance, creating such characters as Porter, a lost one who came to claim a new identity as an explorer. Porter was written with knowledge that Dark Revival would feature a far more serious tone than the first game of Bendy and the Ink Machine, and his lighthearted innocence would help the player feel some warmth in this inky world of sorrow. It is believed that Heidi has spent some time in the pit, a prison set up by Wilson and the Keepers. It is unclear why, but mostly likely she was able to access places she shouldn't have. The experience in the pit changed her, as it does many, reverting her into a child, like State, longing for happiness again. The famous music composer of the studio, Sammy Lawrence, originally had a slightly larger role in the story of Dark Revival, but in a story already filled with so many characters, making them all play a meaningful part became a challenge. he was ultimately sidelined in favor of telling a more coherent storyline. Although it is interesting to note that Sammy Lawrence appears to have mastered the flow ability in Bendy in the ink machine long before Porter and Audrey could weld it. The self-appointed queen of the studio, Alice Angel, is one of the most memorable faces in the Bendy world. Forever lost in a tide of insanity, she's an absolute delight to write for as a character. An angel with many layers. Time will only tell if this inky temptress will ever reappear. Ruler of a sewer cult, Lord Amok illustrates how the world of the ink had continued to develop into different societies deep within the darkest places. Though he was weak in a fight, his name will simply never die. The demented invention of Wilson, created to serve the dual purpose of dethroning the ink demon in the cartoon world, and also upstaging Joey, drew in the eyes of Wilson's father, Nathan Arch. Neither of these happened. Shipahoy Dudley is a mysterious sailor with his own eerie grin, similar to that of Bendy, along with his sidekick Crackle the Crab. It is unknown just what kind of cartoon adventures they would have had together. Ink widows have begun to infest where the light grows darkest. Their king, the biggest and most feared, will only emerge from his nest when its young are threatened. The Lurker, or Steve, as he became to be known, was originally created as a brute-type enemy that would free roam the way lost ones do, but ultimately felt unnecessary as the random ink demon encounters already fulfilled the role of putting in the player on edge while exploring previous traversed location. In the end, the Lurker found a much better calling as an unlikely ally, effectively expanding him into more than just a typical enemy. A faithful maid, among other things, to Wilson, Betty was an important character to the story of Dark Revival. As a failed experiment and someone relatively new to the cartoon studio, she was able to give a somewhat different point, a view on the state of the world. We have purposely left it unclear if Betty was in on Wilson's plot to harvest Audrey or if she is just a bystander. Behind her mask, there are still answers to be found. The man, the legend, the memory. Creating this version of Joey Drew was both an exciting and daunting process. It was clear from the start that this Joey would be different from the one from the original Bendy and the Ink Machine game. This was a man with all the guilt from a past life, but without the experience to fully understand it. The real Joey Drew made many mistakes, but ultimately learned from them. This doesn't absolve him of his sins, but at the end of his life, he was able to help correct some of them and help fight the darkness he created. The original Cycle Breaker. Henry Stein is a ghost of a man who lost his purpose years ago. Once fueled with finding a way to escape the tortures of the ink demon and finding his way home to his wife, Henry is now left with the cold reality of being a recreation of a person he thought he was. Saved as a special surprise for fans of the Bendy and the Ink Machine game, Henry was strictly omitted from all public discussion of the character during the entire production, which spanned several years. But Henry returned with a very satisfying face reveal. Returning for another victory over the ink demon, Allison is always the voice of reason, a beacon of hope. Allison's design was carefully upgraded from the previous Bendy and the Ink Machine game to maintain her personality, but with more fidelity. The purpose of meeting Allison so early in the campaign was to introduce the player to a familiar face after the main introduction. At the start, Allison was able to serve as the motivating force for Audrey until the true plot kicked in later. Tom is Allison's silent protector and the only Boris clone involved in the main story. Where is Boris the Wolf? Rumors has it that during the events of the game, Boris is experiencing a dark survival story of his own. The unknowing daughter of an animation pioneer, Audrey has blocked out the memory of her past after losing her father. But his role in her life was not over. A talented animator and artist, her skills landed her a job at Archgate. Was it fate that led her to reunite with Joey Drew's machine, the machine of her birth, or was it planned? Haunted by the impossible shadow of Nathan Arch, Wilson sought to achieve something that would make his father proud. By luck, he stumbled upon the ink machine and was able to become the cartoon world's new master. Holding the cycle in place, he continued his experiments that could not fully be realized until the ink demon was purged. However, unnaturally entering to and from the ink realm has taken a toll on Wilson's physical being, slowly robbing him of his health. Who put this here?
I don't know. Why would I know that?
Nathan Arch was everything Joey wasn't. He worked hard, built up from nothing, and never compromised his integrity. Joey had big dreams, but Nathan accomplished his own dreams. He and his wife Tessa raised a son with as much love and care as they could, despite Nathan's career pressures. Sadly, his son did not share Nathan's natural talent for business and enterprise. No, you can't have it.